everyone, welcome back to Dream Catalyst audiobook. Again, it's available on Amazon, so you can go to amazon.com and order your own copy. Also, something that I forgot to mention in the other audiobooks that I just realized now, if you can click captions if hearing it alone isn't enough for you and you need to actually see it, you don't have a version of the book. You could, at the bottom of your screen, there's a little CC, like a little box, like at the very bottom there, at the bottom, I think it's on this side, where it says CC. If you click that, then captions show up on the screen, so as I'm reading it out loud, you can visually see it. But the best way to visually see it while I'm reading it is to buy the novel. Just throwing that out there. But yeah, okay. So, enough plugging my stuff. We left off at chapter 6. So now we're going on to chapter 7, which is Frigid Air. So we just finished with Solon's chapter, and now V has Leary. If you missed that chapter, you can go back. Click out of this video and go back to the last video I posted. I don't know if it'll be the last video I posted, but it's the last one where I'm wearing this leather jacket. I filmed all of these in the same day. That I don't wear the same outfit every day, just so you know. Okay, so this chapter is going to be on page 136. It's chapter 7, and it's called Frigid Air. Just wanted to, cool. Okay, so page 136, if you want to follow along with the book. So yeah, chapter 7, Frigid Air. Quote that opens it. He drinks his coffee black. He drinks his liquor strong. Signed V. Leary and I continued to drive even though the tank was nearing empty. We took the scenic country roads, passing hills and other small villages en route. We didn't stop to visit any of the communities we passed. They were a little too small for us. The car was good on gas, which was fortunate as I was officially out of money and could not afford to refill. I intended to stop off in a city, make some money, then head out again once I could refill my tank. I was still not set on a final destination, but I knew wherever I decided to settle on had to have one thing awaiting me, my dreams. Leary was still very timid towards me. She waited patiently in her crate as we traveled the hilly country roads. I felt for Leary. If it weren't for Solon, she wouldn't have so many trust issues. Just one lousy home was enough to instill such a distrust for humanity in her. While Amy was kind enough to supply the equipment to keep Leary settled, they did not provide any toys for the tiny kitten. I pulled out 2 clean socks from my backpack and balled them up for her and threw them into her crate. At first, she pretended they were mice and pounced on them in the tiny enclosure. She was a clever girl, and it did not take her long to realize the small sock balls were nothing more than inanimate objects. Instead of treating them like mice, she began to treat them as a pillow. I knew I couldn't keep Leary, even though Amy wanted me to. It was clear that this was not the type of lifestyle a feline deserved, especially not one with such a timorous disposition to humankind. She deserved to have a stable home in a suburb, or perhaps the country, or maybe a tiny apartment would do. Regardless, it should be permanent, consistent. How better to revive trust issues in a creature than with a sense of security? And knowing I could not provide that for Leary, I hoped to find another who would. Country hills began to mesh with the mountains. The climate around us began to grow rather cold. I was familiar with this frigid air. Thankfully, the car had a working heater. I cranked it to high to offset the chilly atmosphere. I noticed a fork in the road up ahead. It looked as though I had the option to either continue down the country road or to turn onto a winding road. I considered for a moment where to turn. I looked to Leary, who was now clawing at the softballs she was previously cuddling with. The red light on the dash illuminated, indicating we were low on gas. I suppose the car made the decision for me. Up for a detour, I teased the cat, who remained unresponsive to my acknowledging her. Instead, she continued to claw away at her newfound toy. I decided to interpret her silence as a yes. I swung left, rather abruptly, and my backpack on the back seat shifted. And so did Leary's crate, to her discomfort. Meow, she exclaimed in annoyance. I grinned to myself and continued on the road. I drove the car up the winding road. I quickly realized that the escalation of the front of the vehicle indicated an incline in the street. We were traveling up the edge of a mountain. I noticed a ski lodge to my left, parked at the bottom of the sloped mountainside. There was a machine that emitted fake snow. Despite the incline in temperature, as we moved up the mountain, the environment was not cold enough to produce its own snow. There was an unsettling air to this quaint little lodging. Something about it intimidated me from venturing into it, and so I decided to pass it and keep driving up the winding roads. I decided to drive the car until it was almost completely out of gas. I decided to roll down my window and soak in the frigid air. This bothered Leary, who curled herself up into the back corner of her carrying case, wrapping herself in the towel lining the floor. I laughed and rolled my windows up. When I finally considered the car to be indeed on the verge of running completely empty, I decided to pull into what looked to be an abandoned lot. There were no other vehicles in sight, and when I got closer to it, I realized it was the lot belonging to a nature trail that a hiker could trek up the mountainside. I looked to Leary, and she stared back at me. It seemed the two of us were thinking the same thing, though it would be impossible to tell. Still, I liked to imagine we were. What's next? We both thought. Leary and I only differed in one sense. I approached this question with a childlike giddiness, while Leary seemed quite dubious in the uncertainty of that question. In exiting the car, I was sure to lock the doors and keep track of the landmarks that caught my attention, so I could relocate the car again. I noticed a few. There was a small outdoor proscenium stage to the right. It looked abandoned. I imagined it served as an outdoor theater for local musicians or artists to perform for community events. There was also a small outlook across the road that seemed to overlook the view of the trail. Once I was confident that I would be able to find this location again, I picked up Leary's carrying case and began to walk along the winding path up the mountainside and far from that eerie lodging I encountered previously. I ventured through the winding road. I noticed that not many cars would whirl past. The few that did zoom by had drivers who seemed distant and uninterested in communicating with pedestrians. I walked further up the route, and if it were not for the electrical wire above me, I would have feared the entire location was vacant and uncivilized. Leary looked cold, and I felt terrible for her. She looked as though she wanted to exit her enclosure and escape, so she could find a warm recluse on her own. Though I admired Leary's sense of adventure, I figured it best to keep her in her tiny enclosure. I knew she would not be most comfortable with me in the long run, despite her desire to travel alone. After only 10 minutes of wandering the open trail, I noticed a small plaza up ahead. It was nothing fancy, but it looked as though it had a few activities. From where I stood, I could see a few commercialized fast food restaurants, a small post office, and several cafes. I figured this plaza was likely the primary source of entertainment for locals. Aside from this plaza, the town seemed rather empty. I wandered through the town square and noticed something intriguing, a board game cafe. Board game cafes were typically located in small neighborhoods. They would serve as a source of entertainment for the locals. The board game cafe also suggested a dense population of youth. My curiosity overwhelmed me. I decided to venture into the cafe. I walked to the door. The building had large windows on its side, and on the glass were painted several cartoon and anime characters, some of which I recognized from my childhood. I decided to walk in. To my amazement, I saw a wall of board games along the back of the cafe. It was a fascinating sight indeed. I went to the back wall and examined the tower of games that quadrupled my height. "Excuse me," flamed a female voice from behind me. I turned to see a sour-looking lady that reminded me of the cashier from Yippee City, though she did not have a bob cut or an overtly pretentious appearance like Yippie's love interest did. Overall, she seemed like the type who drank her liquor strong. "Can't play the games without buying something," Leary hissed at the barista. She arched her back, and her tail jutted upward. "And no cats," continued the woman, narrowing her eyes as she glanced down at Leary. The barista had her hair pulled back into a tight bun, and her arms were decorated with intricate tattoos. I scanned her arms quickly and noticed a massive paw on her left shoulder, and a small cartoon dog beside it. She was a dog person. Well, I began. If I had the funds, I would have been quick to purchase a coffee or a small meal. At this point, I was quite hungry. I had eaten for the bulk of the day. I had not eaten for the bulk of the day. My last item of canned food went to Yippie's stray dog Fribby. A tinge of regret hit me as I thought back to how quickly I consumed the canned food I had earlier, in hopes that it would lighten my load. If I had suspected then that I would run into Solon and attain a vehicle of my own, or if I thought for a minute circumstances would require I adopt Leary, I would have saved every last spoonful of Campbell's soup my mom had given me. I would purchase, but, I quickly looked across the room and scanned my surroundings. It was a board-game cafe. There was not much else to see. It was by a stroke of luck I noticed a posting on the back wall, a Scrabble competition. Perhaps that would be my way out. I'm actually here for the Scrabble competition, I said quickly. The barista looked surprised. The cat is, my mascot. Oh, said the barista. She walked behind the front counter. Name? It's V, but I'm late to register. I might not show up on the list. It's just that I'm having computer problems, and I just put your name on the list, interrupted the woman impatiently. It's casual. There's no need to register. What can I get you? Do you have to order something to play? I asked timidly. The woman did not look amused. No, I suppose not. She rolled her eyes. I nodded gratefully. Do you, have a washroom? I felt as though it was tempting fate in asking to use their amenities in addition to my many other requests. To the right, pointed the woman. Larry began to hiss at the woman, and I was confident that the woman might have hissed back if she were not working. Leave the cat at the table, and keep it away from the food. The woman pulled out a wash bucket from under the counter and began to wipe down the tables. I was hesitant to leave Larry as she was hissing up a storm. I noticed that she was starting to frighten others in the cafe. I wanted to respect the woman's request, so despite my hesitation, I left her at the counter. I stepped into the washroom and examined myself in the mirror. I looked as though I had been driving for a couple of days. My hair was oily, and some of the eyeliner I was wearing began to smudge. I decided to touch up my makeup a bit. I took a paper towel and drenched it in warm water. I ran my wrists under it for a moment to warm myself. The circulation in my hands always sort of sucked. My hands were always either freezing or clammy. Sort of gross to think of, but the crisp air was here left my hands feeling quite cold. I ran the paper towel across my face. I pulled out my toothbrush from my backpack and began to brush. Within a few moments of grooming, I began to feel more like myself again. I did not realize I did not feel like myself until I began to feel more like myself again, if that made any sense. Part of me thought that maybe that's how life was. As an example, sometimes we lose ourselves in a relationship or our hobbies, or any other activity we can obsess over, until we lose the thing that consumes us. Then we will begin to feel more like ourselves again, without realizing we lost ourselves in the first place. As an example, someone might not be aware that their occupation is interfering with their dreams until they lose their job, or a person gets lost in a love interest only to find themselves again after a breakup. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. Now I was wearing a thin black winged eyeliner, gold eyeshadow from a palette I bought for my 16th birthday, and a pink lip gloss. My hair was longer than I had remembered it. It curled in spirals down my red leather jacket. My jacket was drenched in perfume. I wore a vanilla lavender scent. Something about my reflection looked different from how I remembered it a few weeks ago, when I was living at home. Something changed in the reflection. The change was in my eyes. They were still hazel green in color, but something about them changed. I couldn't tell if it was for the better or worse, but judging from the fact that I couldn't stop smiling and noticing this slight change, I had a feeling it was for the better. It was then that I noticed that Leary was hissing much louder than before. I could hear her from the washroom now. I worried that something had happened to her. I briskly left the restroom to make my way back to her. Leary was still in her carrying case, but now there was someone in front of her. She was hissing, and her back was arched again. The poor cat. Would she ever learn to trust anyone again? A boy was in front of her. It looked as though he was trying to calm her down. He had charcoal hair and piercing green eyes. I started to walk over to him. Hey, sorry about that. Leary's a little shy around people she doesn't know. The boy looked at me. His eyes were just like marbles, like Leary's, but his eyes were sharp, whereas hers were timid. His brows were thick, and in this contrast, his eyes were like emerald stones. I looked down quickly at Leary. She looked quite uncomfortable in the board game cafe. I wondered for a moment if it was a mistake to stop here. "It's all right," said the boy. His eyes did not break from me. It was somewhat intimidating. I was trying to calm her down. Leary looked anything but calm, but I could hardly pin it on the boy's lack of effort. Could barely soothe Leary when she got into a fit. Suppose I needed to take more time to get to know her. "Are you a local?" I asked, attempting to change the subject. Leary was not getting any calmer, and it was sort of pointless to keep trying to soothe her. Perhaps if we left her alone for a few minutes, she would settle on her own. "Yeah," he said. His eyes were very distracting. I'm sure he got a lot though, so I wouldn't make it a point in complimenting him on them. I found the best compliments were those that a person might not expect. The whole point of a compliment was to be original. Original compliments make people feel important. So, I'll be honest. I actually don't know much about this area. I'm not from here. "Oh, really?" said the boy, amused. Any moron could have figured that out. It's a small town. Something about this boy was very mysterious. Felt like I would have to work hard to try and figure him out. Was he an artist like me? Was he non-conforming like Yippee? "So, I'm assuming you've lived here a while then," I said. "You know everyone in the area." "No, I moved here for work. I was born in London," he explained. "It only takes a few years to figure this town out." He was a traveler like me. Something about this boy captivated my interest. Perhaps it was his eyes. Maybe it was how he carried himself. "Heathen, you're up," said the barista. The boy, who I now knew went by Heathen, got up and walked to the Scrabble table, set off to the side of the room. There was another person there, probably 2 times his age. They shook hands and sat across from one another. There was a third person keeping score to the left of the table. I watched the game, magnetized. It seemed as though the two were very strategic in the game. It was clear the two competitors were both avid Scrabble players. They analyzed their opponent's last move and scanned the board. They took several minutes to deliberate each step. Something about the trivial act of pondering one's next move was alluring to me. I watched them both contemplate their next move across the stage. I found something about this competition to be mesmerizing. They were each determined to win, and I waited eagerly to see whom that winner would be. Though I had just met him, I placed my bet on Heathen. He seemed competent in his match, and I could tell he was ambitious in his pursuit of success. He was coming in for the win. This was apparent. His opponent also seemed skilled, but something seemed unnerving in his demeanor. I could not quite pinpoint it until I noticed his hand shaking as he laid his squares on the board. He was anxious. Then I saw something new in his eyes, as he contemplated his next move with regret. It was self-doubt. Yes, he wanted to win, though I think he was not fully aware of his drive within him. Still, he told himself it was not about the win. It was about having fun. He was there to have fun, he tried to convince himself. But he wasn't there solely to have fun. He wanted to win. Being there for the fun of it was a falsehood he would tell himself to reassure himself that when he would lose. He was confident he would. Despite my confidence in Heathen's ability, undoubtedly, he was no competition for a man twice his age, with twice the experience. His diction was impeccable. In fact, for his first 3 moves, Heathen's competition was in the lead. But the look in his eyes shifted to something unflattering. It was consumed by self-doubt. It was apparent that he was more skilled than Heathen, but he did not believe it to be so his game suffered for it. Heathen's eyes were consistent. He seemed ambitious by nature. He was there to win. He, also a skilled player with impeccable diction, trained immensely for this day. I could tell. I don't believe Heathen figured the man across from him to be more skilled than him. In fact, I think he thought the opposite. He judged him by his last move, not by the look in his eyes. While his opponent faltered under pressure, Heathen knew better than to doubt himself. Why should he? He was winning. He was skilled. He did not consider the look of self-doubt in his opponent's eyes. Instead, he convinced himself he was superior to him. If Heathen did not underestimate his opponent as much as he did, He would be quick to discover that his competition's intelligence and skills far surpassed that of the average contestant. In fact, despite him losing, I think his opponent could have trained Heathen. He was clearly more skilled of the two, but he faltered under pressure. Heathen maneuvered his piece onto the board in his final move. Impressed with himself, he stifled his opponent. The lack of confidence in his opponent had granted Heathen the win, and Heathen was crowned champion of the round. The scorekeeper announced a 15-minute break. The nervous runner-up nodded and looked as though he might have extended a hand to Heathen if Heathen did not turn his back from him and walked away. Perhaps Heathen did not notice the gesture, I thought naively to myself. I looked to Leary, who had calmed at Heathen's departure from the table. She was sitting patiently in her enclosure and looked as though she tired herself out from the previous state of distress. I pitied the cat. I must find her a permanent home, I thought to myself. Heathen made his way to the table. Leary moved to the back of the cage and eyed him with an intense glare she welcomed him with previously. Congratulations, I nodded, impressed with his collected demeanor. Well, yeah, he said, nodding. That guy comes in here all the time. He's not my main concern. He did well in his first few moves, I suggested. Heathen shook his head. Not really. He always does decently at the start, but he's inconsistent. Always makes risky moves, silly mistakes, amateur stuff. There's another woman who comes in. She's not here yet. She's usually late, and she's excellent. Who is? Oh, is she? I started. How long has she played? Her whole life. Her mother was an English major. Got her into it when she was young. She came in here at first for several national spelling bees. She started doing Scrabble instead because it was more fun, I guess. Is she your age too? I asked. No, a couple years older. I'm the youngest one here. Well, aside from you. He looked over at me. Oh, I'm not actually here for Scrabble, I admitted. I don't play. Well, I've played a couple times, but I usually lose. I just do it for fun, not competitively. Actually, it's kind of cool you play Scrabble. I didn't think you could play competitively. Oh yeah, it's a thing, Ethan said sarcastically. I smiled. Do you want a coffee? He asked. Oh, sure, thanks. I usually would have declined, but the barista kept wandering to the table and eyeing Leary, who was causing a nuisance in the board game cafe. Cool, I'll go get it, he said. How do you drink your coffee? With honey and cinnamon, I said. With honey and cinnamon? He laughed. Okay. Well, I don't like things too bitter, I playfully retaliated. How do you drink yours? Black, he winked. I got chills. I like mine bitter. Leary seemed very irritated at this point, so despite the discontented barista from behind the counter, I released her from her enclosure, and I began to stroke her. Every time I showed Leary some affection, she began to trust me a little more. He then got back and handed me my honey coffee. Enjoy your bitter coffee, I teased, as I watched him take his first sip. Sip? Honey is for the weak, he protested. Your coffee is no match for mine. Interesting, I began. I can drink my coffee black. You know, I just choose not to. But the real question is, can you handle the extra espresso shot? Holy, I remarked sarcastically, a real tough guy. Not really, he admitted. I just feel awkward drinking coffee without a shot in it. Espresso makes up for the lack of vodka. He winked at me. I tried not to blush. Leary hissed simultaneously. I tried to hush her by stroking her fur. It didn't really work. So, he said, what's your deal? What's the deal with you? You're a traveler. Cool. Alright, cool. But what are you running from? I was taken aback by this. I'm not running from anything, I said defensively. Not all of those who wander are lost. All right, Tolkien. He chuckled. Pardon? He rolled his eyes. Don't tell me you're one of those girls who quote shit that they don't know the reference to. Leary hissed, and I became defensive. Pardon me? It's a common saying. Not all of those who wander are lost. What's the problem here? Because that quote has become a mantra for the wanderers of all of those wanderlust girls who want to sound like they know shit that get that quote tattooed up their arms. They post in front of the Eiffel Tower, all holier than thou. Then when you ask them if they've read The Lord of the Rings, they scratch their heads. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his cell phone. Here, look. All that is gold does not glitter. J.R.R. Tolkien. Give me that. I snatched the phone from his hand and read the poem. Well, it's beautiful. I don't think it was meant to be, he retaliated. It's supposed to be informative. So, cool. You're a wanderlust. I get it. But you're not running from something. What are you looking for? Honestly, I replied, I don't know. Oh, you don't know. So you're traveling without a destination? That's dumb. Perhaps, I admitted. But I would much rather be dumb and young than corrupted and bitter. Besides, the foolish aren't fools. Do you know where that one came from? I don't know, he averted his eyes. Up here, I said, tapping my temples. All right, kid, he diverted the conversation. So where are you staying the night? Oh, brother. I'm not sure, I admitted. My car's out of gas. I'm stuck here until I find a gig. A gig, he started. For what? Are you a model or something? No, a vocalist. And a writer. But I have writer's block and I can't find a gig. So right now I guess I'm neither. You're funny. Cool, you'll stay at my place then. Wait, pardon? I asked. Yeah. You can stay until you find a job. You can chip in on the rent once you do. I'll help you look for something. My eyes widened. I've only known this boy for a brief period. He was already offering me a place to stay, and he offered to help me find a gig. Was this even safe? I looked at Leary and he caught my gaze. The cat can come too. I like cats. Heathen was sweet. He was offering me a place to stay. I really couldn't afford to say no. Although I had only just met this young man. Sure, he seemed nice and all, but I wasn't sure if him appearing to be helpful was enough to suffice my concerns. I don't know, I replied. All right, well, you need dinner, he said. Come to my place. I'm drinking with some friends tonight. We'll order pizza and chill. Sure, I said. That was an offer I couldn't turn down. Just then, the cafe's bells chimed, and in stepped a tiny woman. She had a tattoo sleeve up her right arm. She wore a meek smile as she entered. She looked to be a couple years older than Heathen, and Heathen was a year or two younger than me. She was quite beautiful. She captured Heathen's attention as soon as she entered the cafe. The barista smiled and nodded to me. I nodded at her, the barista smiled and nodded at her. She waved to Heathen, and he nodded back. She walked to a group of people in the back corner of the cafe. There were 2 women and a man around Heathen's age there as well. The man wore a cartoonish shirt with monsters decorating the sleeve. He wore a white fitted t-shirt that revealed he was very fit. He was also handsome, tall, and slender. The other 2 women were also stunning. One was of South Asian descent. She wore her long black hair draped over her right shoulder. The woman with the long hair embraced the tiny framed woman that so captivated Heathen. The third woman was white, and she wore her blonde hair in a ponytail. They all conversed together in the corner of the cafe. Heathen licked his lips as he looked toward the woman with the tattoo sleeve. I rolled my eyes at his attitude. Disgusting, I thought. All right, he said. Want another coffee? They're going to call me up soon. That woman who walked in is my competition. Are you nervous? I asked. He shook his head. No, I can beat her. She lets me win. Want another coffee? I shook my head. He put down $5 on the table. If you change your mind, he said. You better cheer me on. He then walked to the table and shook hands with the man in the cartoonish jacket. I did not see him enter, but he must not have been here long. The blonde woman and the woman with the long hair welcomed him also. This group seemed close. I assumed that they were friends Heathen was planning to invite home for pizza. I watched as they conversed. I was not asked to enter the conversation, so I took the opportunity to stroke Leary. I desperately wanted her to trust me, though building that connection seemed to be quite the task. Further still, I wondered if it was even worth making that connection with Leary. Why have her build a sense of trust with me before giving her to a new owner? I knew it would be unfair of me to keep her. Cats enjoy consistency, and my life was far from that. Heathen and Elfin? The barista called. The scorekeeper also resumed her seat at the desk. So, the tiny woman who captivated Heathen, who I now knew went by the name Elfin, sat across from Heathen. The group all crowded around the table. I placed Larry back in her enclosure and moved my chair closer to the match. Heathen winked at Elfin. Elfin blushed. Elfin let Heathen take the first move. He put down the word quickly, collecting some points. While I would suppose most would be intimidated by this initial move, Heathen simply smiled. We all figured that Elfin was bluffing, though I think Heathen knew full well she wasn't. She built off of quickly placing down the word quizzitic, pulling in the lead. I was dumbfounded, just like the rest of the onlookers. Perchance it was nothing more than luck, but the match continued as such. Elfin demolished Heathen in the beginning round. In the second, she could only fit Star in the blocks, while he managed to pull ahead with Zebra. The two took turns intermittently decrowning the other with superior moves to their proceeding. We initially considered it a close call until Elfin cheekily dropped an A, creating the word za, a slang for pizza, to the annoyance of her opponent, and to the amusement of the group holistically. She pulled ahead and ended the game. He then shook her hand out of courtesy and to show good sportsmanship. We all applauded Elfin. He then watched as she made her way to the bar stool to sit by the barista. He offered her a coffee as a prize for her win in a sarcastic manner. She denied him and offered him a coffee as a consolation prize. He laughed and declined also. He returned to his seat across from me, but he would not break his gaze from Elfin. "She's very talented," I remarked. Larry was unamused, yet again without Heathen's presence. Heathen was neutral to Leary's presence, and despite her attitude, he was not kind toward her. He was even kind toward her. I decided Leary would simply have to overcome her false preconception of Heathen. "Yes," Heathen nodded. He turned back to face me. "So, what's your deal with your name?" "I'm sorry?" This boy had an odd way of speaking. "I mean," he laughed. "What is it? You haven't mentioned." "Oh," I replied, "my name is V." "V? What does that stand for?" I wished he wouldn't have asked. He didn't seem like the type who would. "I don't know yet." I prepared myself for the ridicule. "You don't know what your own name?" the boy teased. "Your parents never told you what your name stood for?" "No," I replied. "My mother told me I would discover what it stood for in time." "Your father couldn't give you a hint?" he pushed. "I don't get along with my father," I explained. "Is that why you left?" he questioned. "It was a motorbiter," I admitted, "but it was not the reason why I left. The cul-de-sac was too small for me." "I see," he nodded. "Hey, do you smoke?" This took me off guard. "No," I replied. "Do you?" "Only when I'm bored. I'll be right back." He got up from the table and made his way to the exit. Astounding, I thought to myself. This boy is rude. Maybe I shouldn't stay. I looked back to Leary, and I felt as though if she could talk, she would be echoing the same statement. She seemed all the less inclined to stay. But she had no grasp of finance, nor could she possibly understand the urgency that we were under to find food. Leary's food supplies was well stocked. But that was to my sacrifice. I decided that dinner with Heathen would be the most strategic next step. Heathen eventually stepped back into the shop and pointed Leary and me out to his group of companions. Elfin was amongst them. She looked over and waved at me. It seemed as though she was inviting me over to sit with them. It was very thoughtful, and I accepted the offer. "Nice to meet you, V," greeted Elfin. "I've never met a woman so equally humble and fierce, especially one who had such a tiny frame." "Congratulations on your win," I said, gesturing to the Scrabble station. "Thank you," chuckled Elfin. "I do it for fun now, but I love beating Heathen. It irritates him." I laughed. "Hello, V." The boy with the cartoonish jacket extended his hand. "I'm Stade." "Stade?" I chuckled to myself. Never met a serious man in a cartoonish vest. Though, now that I did give it some consideration, he did seem rather formal in his persona. Perhaps his outward appearance, and perhaps not his outward appearance, but maybe he was trying to compensate with a more outlandish physical presence to make up for his more stoic demeanor. Perhaps the purpose of his more flamboyant appearance was to appeal to an onlooker, so that they would not initially judge him to be too serious. "Hi, I'm Dope," smiled the woman with long hair. "And this is Apt." The blonde woman in spectacles shook my hand and... "Apt, do you play?" I pointed to the board. "Oh, no, I do quite horribly if I played." She chuckled to herself. "I see," I thought to myself. "She is apt but humble, sort of like the man Heathen competed against." This sort of seemed to be the case. Some of the smartest people I've known would always self-doubt their aptitude. They would frequently fail out of programs and score poorly on tests, while the inept found their way to the very top. I took this evidence as proof that the correlation between success and intelligence was nothing more than a facade. Hard work also didn't constitute success. I know a lot of hard-working, unsuccessful people. What was it, then, that made these inept few so successful? Was it It was the self-doubt of the intellect. Something told me that if Apt played, she would win. Elfin, V, called the barista loudly from behind our table. I jumped. Oh no. I did sign up to play, hadn't I? I was going to fail miserably. I looked at Elfin. She was flashing a genuine smile at me. I guess that's us. Elfin tucked in her chair. Come on, V. Heathen was laughing behind her. I felt like a prisoner walking to the end of death row. This was going to sting. Elfin fit the quote. Though she be but little, she is fierce to an absolute T. Elfin noticed my hesitation to play, and she attempted to soothe me. It's literally just Scrabble, she laughed. It's supposed to be fun. I don't care if you're skilled. I don't care if you're not. Let's just have fun. I smiled. She was right. Games are meant to be fun, as long as neither person was hurt at the end. Everyone was a winner. The scorekeeper smiled and instigated the match. We competed. Elfin started the match with Ari, beginning the game with 4 vowels on the board. I looked down at my tiles. S-W-E-L-L-P-O. Well, I'm off to a great start. I thought to myself. In all actuality, I only played Scrabble a very finite number of occasions, all of which I had lost, despite being a writer. My everyday use of diction was okay, nothing impressive, and needless to say, Scrabble was not my forte. I looked at my pieces again. I guess I could play all off of Elfin's A. I collected 3 points for that move. I could hear Heathen laughing as I did. This irritated me. Elfin isn't in the lead by far, I thought to myself. But in reality, I knew that she was likely playing a strategy, and I, transparently, was not. But Elfin would just smile reassuringly toward me. It was encouraging and thoughtful. I picked up 2 more letters, another E and N. I was clueless as to how I would use them. Elfin linked on an S and an M to my all, earning herself another 4 points. I decided to play so, earning myself 7 points, because I got double on the W. I was impressed with myself. I pulled in the lead with 10 points to Elfin's 9. Heathen laughed. Letting an amateur pull in the lead, he winked to Elfin. Quit going easy on her. I became angry. No one was going to go easy on me. So was a great play. It got me 7 points. I could sense Elfin saw my frustration. Don't listen to Heathen, she stated. I never do. So he teased Elfin too? I thought to myself, how could someone tease another more skilled than them? Maybe it was just the way he spoke. Still, I wouldn't let it throw me off of my game, quite literally in this particular circumstance. I looked over to Leary. Though she was a cat and incapable of comprehending what was proceeding in the match, one might have confused her as captivated by the game, just as everyone else in the cafe was. She seemed to be looking right at me. It was quite encouraging. I picked up a Q and a U. I already saw an opening. Queen. The letters I needed were on the board, and I would just wait until my turn and impress Heathen. Elfin took a moment to scope out the board. She took several minutes. Ha! I stumped her, thought to myself. Guess I should have doubted myself after all. Elfin took several small moments to contemplate her move. All the while, I attempted to mask my sense of superiority and offered her a meek smile as a means to reconcile any negative disposition my last move might have left her in the game. I was grateful that Elfin did not pick up on my competitive end, nor on my cocky attitude toward the match. It was, after all, just a game, and I never pegged myself to be the competitive type. Elfin looked very concentrated on the board. The silence extended out for quite some time, and I figured maybe I should consider my next move too, though I had no way to tell what Elfin might play next. Finally, Elfin played Zex, and tagged it onto the E I was going to use for my next move. What does that even mean? What does Zex mean? I outburst. Dumbass, Heathen called from the back. I shrunk a little. It's a tool for cutting roof slate. It counts. Elfin saw how embarrassed I got and told Heathen to shut up. I was just trying to help, Heathen muttered back. If she'd called to check it, it would have ended the game. Then all of this fun would end. No interference from the crowd, called the scorekeeper, hushing Heathen. This shut him up for a little while. V, don't feel bad, Elfin smiled. I play competitively, remember? I actually trained for this. For someone untrained, you are doing very well." Despite her efforts, this small reassurance did not help to offset my stagnation and confidence as the scorekeeper tallied up my points. Z is 10 points, E is 1, and Elfin got a double on X, giving her a total of a score of 36. I can catch up with Queen, I thought to myself. I mean, I'll still be behind, but at least I can catch up and start catching up. I began to place my tiles onto the board, stealing the E from So. "No, wait," said Elfin. "You can't tag that onto So. It'll sandwich the N and M and Z. M's isn't a word." My blunder made me blush. I stuttered an apology and recollected my tiles. Great. Now not only did I expose some of my letters, but now Heathen was laughing at me again. I had no idea what to play at this point. I was entirely lost. Elfin smiled back at me. "O and A are pretty common," she started, "and Z is on the board. Do you have either of those letters?" I did see Elfin play Za in her last game. I didn't have an A, though. I looked down at the tiles in front of me. I did have an O. Though I never heard of the word Zo, I decided to take her advice and play it, at the risk that she might be sabotaging me. I placed down the word, and sure enough, it counted. I collected 11 points, leaving me at 21 points. Still, a good 15 points behind Elfin, but it was better than nothing. The game persisted, and even with the occasional aid from Elfin, I lost quite brutally. We shook hands, and Elfin offered to buy me a coffee. When I declined, she explained it was customary that friends buy each other coffee post-game to ensure there was no hardship between them. She told me that she liked me and insisted, so I accepted. "You and Heathen didn't exchange coffee after your match," I chuckled after she handed me my second coffee with cinnamon and honey of the day. "Yeah, well, Heathen and I butt heads too often for customs," she teased. "I never let him buy, he never lets me, and I win more often than him. Usually, that leaves him bitter for a little while, so I try to steer clear of him for an hour or so post-game," she giggled to herself. "What got you into Scrabble?" I asked her. She just chuckled. "Oh, I don't know. Probably my competitive side. I like playing games I'm good at. I've been enrolled in spelling bees since I was a kid. Words are my forte." She smiled. "That's valid." I smiled back at her. "I really like your tattoo sleeve, by the way." I gestured to her right arm. "Thank you," she exclaimed. "My friend Abel designed it for me. She's incredible. The barista and I are going down again next week. I want to touch up on one of my octopus tentacles. It's starting to fade a bit, and I really wanted a seahorse. I'm going to see if it has the time to fit one into my left shoulder here." She pointed to her only bare shoulder on her bare space on her left shoulder. "You really like the ocean," I exclaimed, examining her arm. "I see like a million different sea creatures." I exaggerated. "Yeah, let me show you." She pulled the sleeve of her t-shirt back up and exposed several tinier cartoon sea critters. "I love whales. That's why I have 3, she laughed. "I got this coral reef a while ago. My first tattoo ever was this blowfish. This mermaid I got on International Women's Day 2 years ago. And I got the shark fin during my 5th year competition in International Scrabble. I placed 3rd that year." "Wow, that is really impressive," I started. "So, what sparked that interest in sea creatures?" "Well, I'm an environmental advocate. Actually, I studied environmental engineering in college. I studied the science behind pollutants, and I'm working as a research assistant to save the coral reefs. I just always sort of connected with sea life. Something about the ocean is exciting to me. It's mysterious." "Yeah, I guess it is. I always had this fascination for the sky for some reason," I said, reflecting back to the nights at the ravine. I was reading poetry from my thoughts to the stars. Something about the sky truly did intrigue me. It was mystical and unknown. I liked hidden things. It instilled a sense of wonder in me. It seemed as though Elfin and I were similar in that sense. She thought the sea was mysterious, and I got my sense of wonder from the stars. I also got my inkling from the way Elfin smiled at others that she also liked the mystery of strangers. I figured that was why she invested her time in getting to know me. She and I were also similar in that sense. "People are mysterious too," I said aloud. "I'm sorry?" Elfin asked. "Oh, no. You just got me thinking. I love the sky, and you love the sea. But I think the real mystery is in people." "Oh, how so?" she started. "Well, for starters, you can never really know a person. Isn't there a proverb that speaks to that ideology? Each person has three faces. The first they show to the world, the second they show to those closest to them, and the third they show to no one. I guess people are kind of like the sea. We're just as mysterious. There definitely is some mysterious components to human beings, Elfin laughed. I don't know if I can say we're all as mysterious as the sea. Some of us are pretty shallow. She rolled her eyes. I imagine she recalled to mind a few specific people that fit that statement. Yeah, I guess, I said. Anyways, what do you think about the proverb? I don't know why I'm going off on this, I laughed. No, that's quite all right. I like having deep conversations with philosophers every once in a while. She nudged my shoulder, and I smiled. That was not my name. I mean, sure, she continued. We have different versions of ourselves that we reveal to others. As an example, I just met you, so I don't know that much about you. But I'm sure your mom knows a great deal more about you than I ever would. Maybe you would even know more about yourself than she ever would. Though, the point remains. Can you ever show your full self to anyone? Like your inner thoughts? I would say yes. I would say no. Why would you say yes, though? I asked. Okay, well, because of this. When you write in a diary, you are writing your innermost secrets. Sure, your exact thoughts may not exactly translate to the page depending on your skill level. Let's assume that someone is really good at writing. They might free write for a bit, scrummage through their thoughts, and make sense of whatever they're feeling in the moment. Then someone reads the entry. Their third face becomes apparent to that reader. I mean, true, I thought. But can one really project their inner selves in being bound to tactile concepts and realities? Okay, as for instance, if your diary entry mentions your relatives, then you single out one specific person and discuss an event that caused you either enlightenment or turmoil. So that person, when they then finds the entry and reads it, and they discover a glimpse of that person's third face, and maybe they did not truly discover a glimpse of anything special. Maybe they just discovered a secret, something the writer was trying to shield from them to protect their feelings. And maybe the writer was too influenced by the emotions caused by the event that tainted their perception of their subject to articulately portray their true feelings toward them, without bias. Maybe for one to truly discover something about a person's third face, they would have to read a fictional piece of theirs, something that removes the bias. Oh, I see. So that they might grasp a glimpse of their subconscious by reading a writer's work of fiction, considered Elfin. Okay, I see what you're saying. So, maybe someone is not fully capable of revealing their third face because they aren't entirely sure of what it looks like in their first place. The third face is their subconscious. Yeah, exactly, I agreed. Maybe that's why people are fascinated with stories about mermaids or vampires or wizards. The author can express their third face, their subconscious, through these fictional characters. They aren't exactly a reflection of reality, nor are they tactile objects of any sort, but they share just enough similarities with human beings, just enough shared experiences, that the author's subconscious can truly be expressed. I like you, philosopher, Elfin smiled. You would be fun to get high with, she said. I laughed. I've gotten that before, I admitted. I don't smoke, though. But yeah, I like talking about philosophy. I guess I mean, why waste energy discussing reality? The abstract is so much more fun. Do you have any tattoos? Elfin asked. Oh no, I'm too chicken for that, I laughed. I'm surprised. For someone so interested in revealing their third face, you sure do take extra precaution to hide it from the world. Tattoos fit your description of a tool to communicate one's self-conscious perfectly. It is not exactly tactile in the traditional sense. Tattoos are very abstract, and yet still real, still human, a reflection of one's subconscious. She had a point. Elfin was very intelligent. She could blame her Scrabble win on training and skill all she liked. While I am confident that did contribute a substantial part to her success, it was not enough to beat Heathen. He had similar training to her, perhaps even more experience in actually playing Scrabble. Still, though, she won. That win could be credited to her intelligence. She had a humble disposition to match her competitive edge. She was willing to help me save face, while she could have quickly demolished me in the match. Though humble, she did not doubt herself the way Heathen's first opponent had. Elfin was self-assured, and I think that is what made her so powerful. The barista walked over, holding Leary's enclosure. I had left I had left her on the table with Apt, Stayed, and Dote. "Take your cat," the barista stated, placing Leary's enclosure onto my lap. "Oh, she's yours?" Elfin exclaimed. She was swooning over the scared kitten in her crate. I adore kittens, and to my luck, the barista adored Elfin. So, she smiled at Elfin. When Elfin asked the barista if it would be all right if she held Leary and took her out of her enclosure just for a minute, the barista and I both agreed. Elfin carefully opened the cage and placed Leary out from the back corner in the crate where she was curled up into. She placed the bundle on her lap and began to stroke the kitten. Leary warmed up to her almost instantaneously, and I was amazed by this. It had taken me an eternity, it'd taken me an entire day to get Leary to let me pull her out of her enclosure. Elfin, on the other hand, was able to establish trust with Leary in only a moment. I observed them, so I could see how Elfin interacted with Leary, so I could later mimic the same actions to develop the same trust with the cat. Elfin was not handling Leary any differently than I had been. Then I realized what Elfin's secret was. Just like in the Scrabble match, it was her level of self-assurance that made Elfin so successful. Elfin was not anxious the way I had been in handling Leary. I really liked and respected Elfin. Apparently, I wasn't the only one, because across the room I spotted Heathen looking over at her. He flashed her a half-smile, and though Elfin didn't see it, I noticed. "If you had to get a tattoo, what would it be? What would you get?" Elfin asked, continuing our conversation from before. "Oh, I have no idea," I responded. "Maybe something to do with the sky." Heathen walked up to us and took the kitten from Elfin's lap. "What the hell, Heathen?" she exclaimed. Despondent to her reaction to his trek to the table, he rolled his eyes. "I came to formally invite you to my apartment," he said sarcastically. "Consider this your invitation. We're drinking, maybe smoking, maybe ordering pizza. Are you coming?" He rolled his eyes again. "Yes, Heathen, already said I was coming." Elfin snatched Leary back from him. "Well, we're leaving now. Bring the cat if you want. Just come." He stormed out of the cafe. "What's up with him?" Elfin questioned. "I have no idea," I admitted. You've known him for longer." "Yeah, he gets moody sometimes. Guess we better go then." "What's her name?" Elfin asked, gesturing to the kitten. "Leary," I said. "Come on, Leary," she spoke softly to her. "Let's go get some pizza. I love cats so much." Together, we walked up into the street. The frigid air from the mountains trickled my spine. We decided to cab to Heathen's. Elfin told us it was on her. The barista looked as though she wanted to come, but all the same, she had to work late. I glanced up at the stars before getting into the cab. I wonder what this night holds in store for me, I thought to myself, aside from the frigid mountain air. Okay, so that was Chapter 7, Frigid Air. So they're left off on the mountainside, and if you decide to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications, you'll get updates on when we read Chapter 8 next Monday at 6 p.m. Heavenless Skies. So, don't forget to recommend my book to people, or maybe get it yourself off of Amazon.com, not .ca for Canadian followers. Cool. So, thank you very much for staying, connected with me on this journey and, staying and listening to the story. I really appreciate that you've taken an interest in my book and have made it up to Chapter 7. So we're going to Chapter 8 next. There are 14 chapters in the novel, so stay tuned next week and we'll get you all caught up in the next chapter. Oh. Thanks. Bye!